Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host and producer, Logan Landers, and joining me to talk about NFL draft prospect, quarterback out of Washington, Michael Penix Jr. Helping me do some draft analysis is the very talented Mr. William Yanish III, coming over from FirstRoundMock.com. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. How about you, Logan?
Doing well, friend. Doing well. And we are right around the corner from the NFL draft. At the time of this recording, we are less than 3 weeks away, and we are all pumped here on the network. And you guys can also watch our reaction, see what we're doing, because we do have our live draft show coming up. That will be on April 25th, starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So check us out on our channel. We're going to do a little pre-draft analysis. And then once it kicks off at 8, you'll get to hear our reactions as it is going on live. Looking forward to it. But back to business here, Mr. Yanish. Give me your thoughts, what you think about Michael Penix Jr., a guy who has had a lot of press around him in past 365 days.
Oh man, speaking of which, going back to that draft kick countdown thing, on FirstRoundMock.com on our site, we got a clock on there. We're 20 days, 10 hours, 2 minutes, and about 31 seconds away
There
from
we
the
go,
draft.
precision.
Man, I mean, it's coming close, and I mean, what better? I mean, we can talk about Michael Penix here. One of the best quarterbacks in this draft. I mean, he's had a history. He spent 4 years in Indianapolis, and he didn't do a whole lot there. He ended up transferring, in 2022 to Washington, and he's been tearing it up ever since. One of the things that come up with Penix is his injury history, for one, and I mean that is the only concerning thing that I have with him. Hurting both shoulders, and I believe there was an ACL tear too. He is a guy who was playing hurt. You could tell. I mean, originally he had this kind of waist torquing, like really weird throwing motion going on, and it wasn't helping his accuracy, ball placement, anything like that. But I mean, he really put it together once he ended up with Rome Odunze and Polk up there in Washington. I mean, this guy, he's 6'3", 213 pounds. He has one of the most beautiful passes I mean, deep balls in the draft period. I mean, in the league. And I mean, he, like I said, finally getting a little bit more healthy. And I mean, you could steadily tell. I mean, he was standing in face of pressure, the happy feet stops from the sacks. You could tell he was almost like hurting or something. I mean, he would start panicking when the rush came. But I mean, nothing but improvement since. He put up first round film in this last year in 2023. However, like I said, due to the health kick, I ended up with the third round grade on him. He played first round wise, but I mean, when it just comes down to it, I mean, being an older prospect, being born in 2000, so he'll be 25 about the time the season rolls around or so. But no, man, I mean, he took Washington to the playoffs. I mean, the kid can flat out sling it. What's funny is between 2022 and 2023, I just noticed is he had one more pass for one more completion
Yeah,
than the
talk
year
about
before.
consistent.
Yeah, yeah. Consistency is key when it comes down to things,
Yeah, for
And
sure.
when it comes down to all this draft stuff popped up lately, I mean, he came out, he ran a 4.46 40, had a 36 and a half inch vertical, but that's not his game. So I mean, people, of course it's a plus, but he doesn't scramble. You know, he gets away from pressure. You know, he's the quarterback. He keeps his eyes downfield, and you know, just does his thing. And I mean, he's got the size, arm strength. I mean, he's got pillowy touch on some of his passes. He can flat, you know, drop some dimes, you know, and I mean, came so close, you know, uh, this year in the playoffs. I mean, he should, you know, end up someplace like Denver, you know, some coach, you know, like Sean Payton that likes those you know, pocket passing quarterbacks. Um, you know, someplace. I mean, he's definitely gonna um, make an impact somewhere, and like I said, he can sling it. So I don't know, man. What do you think about Michael?
Michael Penix has a very interesting career, as you mentioned, a guy who, up until he transferred to Washington, no one really had as a potential Heisman candidate, a first round pick or first round pick even, and was just overall wasn't a lot of hype around him. It was more so, man, this guy just cannot stay on the field. But as you said, after his time in at Indiana concluded, he said, "I'm going to go to Washington and see what I can do here." And I know he probably thanks himself and whoever told him to transfer there every day for doing that, because his life changed. His draft trajectory changed once he went over to Washington, where, as you mentioned, he put up video game like numbers and also led the Washington Huskies to the college football playoff championship appearances. And this is a guy who, as you mentioned, a lot of quarterbacks in this draft are a little bit older. You know, Bo Nix immediately comes to mind as well. A lot of those guys who got that COVID year that other generations have never had before, who decided to stick around. So you can look at it as that's a disadvantage because he's a year older, or an advantage because he got more playing time. Obviously, for Michael Penix, I think that's an advantage because we got to see what he could do for real at Washington. And yes, his injury history is going to harm his draft stock. That's going to happen. As unfortunate as it is for not just him, but for every player whose draft status gets hurt due to injury history, as much as he was on the injured list, it's hard not to ignore it. You see that when he's on the field, he's productive. He was at Washington. When he's off the field, he's not doing anything for you. He's rehabbing. And this guy's been through a lot of rehab on a lot of different body parts, as you said. So I like Michael Penix, all in all. I really do. Obviously, he's had strong showings. He's got one of the best arms in this draft. And his deep ball accuracy is some of the best you're going to see in a lot of draft classes. I think Michael Penix Jr. is a good player. I am curious to see how his game is going to translate at the next level, because another flag that people are throwing up is potentially, was it the injuries at Indiana or was it the scheme at Washington? Was he just a really good system quarterback at Washington, or was what we saw, the limited action at Indiana, is that his true ability? I've seen people say that. So it seems like Michael Penix has his back against the wall. But as we've seen with his time at Washington, he's going to keep fighting. He's going to prove everyone wrong. He's going to prove the doubters wrong. And he is going to have a solid career, I think, in the NFL. And as you mentioned, William, that even though he might not be that first round selection, guys can still come out of middle of the round draft picks and still produce. Michael Penix could easily do that. And to me, it's tougher and tougher for quarterbacks to come into the league each year, because it seems like more and more teams are drafting quarterbacks as opposed to picking them up in free agency. So it's even tougher for these guys to really get a spot, I feel. And I think Michael Penix is going to do a great job. He did good work at Washington, and I can't wait to see how that translates at the next level. What are your final thoughts, Mr. Yanish, on Michael Penix?
Well, you know, he's conquered adversity. You know, he's going to be excitement, you know, somewhere, you know, living up here, like I mentioned, you know, Denver, um, I'm excited to see, what he can do, and here, there's a ton of fans here, that are either on the Penix bandwagon or the Knicks bandwagon, and I mean, I think one of them's going to end up in Denver, and I can't wait to see what this young man does. I mean, he's a heck of a player, and he's just a warrior, man. He's been through hell and back, and I mean, you can't do anything else than keep going forward, man. So I can't wait to see what he does.
Well said, William. Well said. Well, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give us a like, follow, share, and subscribe on social media, Facebook and YouTube. Also, go check out our podcast. For William Yanish III, I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. Guys, we'll talk to you on another live episode really soon.